Hi everyone, I'm Dina with Mills Family Gardening. Today we're going to talk about how to grow Roma tomatoes in containers. Right here we have a Roma tomato that I started from seed back in January. I started the seeds a little bit early and the seedlings got a little leggy from staying in containers, small containers for a long time. And nevertheless, we planted outside here and right now it's doing really well. The main stem of it has gotten much thicker. It's very green, lush and healthy looking. Roma tomatoes are a determinate variety of tomatoes, which means they're not vines. They don't grow indeterminately or indefinitely. At some point they will stop their growth and they would get to their mature size at about 4 or 5 feet tall, and then they will ripen their fruit at about in a short period of time, and after that they will lose their vigor and set little to no fruit. And since Roma tomatoes grow pretty fast and they're small bush type tomatoes, they are perfect candidates for growing them in containers. Roma tomatoes are also a perfect variety of tomatoes for a short growing season. If you live in a cold place that has a very short summer, then Roma varieties are your tomatoes to grow. Here in Texas we have two shorter seasons. We have a spring season and fall season. During that time the tomato plants are vigorous, they produce real well, they grow flowers and set fruit. During the months of June through July or even beginning of September, our tomatoes don't set fruit because it's too hot for them and the flowers simply drop. When it comes to pruning Roma tomatoes, the pruning needs to be very minimal since Roma tomatoes stop their growth at a certain point, so you would want all the growth they can put out to produce as many tomatoes as they possibly can. Nevertheless, I still prefer doing some pruning to keep the plant healthy and vigorous. First of all, I try to keep all the lower leaves trimmed so they would not be touching the soil, and whenever I water the container, this water would not be splashing on the leaves because all the bacteria from the soil might get onto the leaves and develop some diseases. Tomato plants have two kinds of stems. This one is the stem that grows leaves and does not produce any fruit, so it stopped growing and it's not going to grow anymore. Then the other kind of stems are the ones that are going to produce fruit, and they grow in between the leaves and the main stem of the plant. So I'm going to trim this leaf stem so it wouldn't be growing so close to the soil by simply pruning it like that. And then with this side shoot or sucker, I'm going to keep it because it will grow and produce fruit. I'll do the same with this leaf stem. I'll just cut it all the way here, and I'm going to keep the side shoot right here that it will eventually produce fruit. Now with this lower side shoot, it's really up to you what you would like to do with it. I could keep it and simply trim the side leaves that don't produce any fruit and let the main stem keep growing. Eventually it will flower and produce tomatoes. But I could also trim it just to raise up the plant so it wouldn't be so close to the soil and would not breed any diseases. I could also trim this leaf stem because it's a little bit close to the soil, but right now the plant is a little bit small, it's too young, so I'm going to let it grow more and then I'll come in later and trim this leaf here. And as this Roma tomato keeps growing, I'm going to be coming back once in a while and removing non-fruit bearing leaves just to open up the center, let the air in, let the sunlight in, just to keep the plant healthy. Also, if you notice that some leaves are yellow or brown and don't look healthy, don't hesitate to trim them just so that the disease would not be spreading to the rest of the plant. Right now our plant is still young and healthy looking. We don't have any diseased leaves, so I'm not going to worry about that now. The other reason why we don't prune the suckers on Roma tomatoes is at some point the tomato will stop growing these suckers completely. Even though Roma tomatoes are a bush type tomatoes, they still need some caging to uphold all that heavy fruit that is going to bear. Right here I have another tomato. This is Florida Everglades tomato, and they have a standard tomato cage here. I could use the same cage for this tomato, but I ran out of them, so I'll have to make my own. To build a cage, I'm going to use these garden stakes that I got on Amazon last year. The package had quite a few of them, so instead of buying a new tomato support, I'm simply going to use these. I'm using 4 of them, and I'm going to place them in the container at the same distance from each other. And then I'm going to use a galvanized steel wire. It's not very thick, and I'm going to go around every stake at least once to make sure that the wire is fastened well enough, and I'll go that way around every stake and create some sort of a cage. And I'm going to put this wire at several layers as the tomato plant grows. The benefit of growing plants in containers is you can move the containers in the shade or the sun or in protected area depending on the weather and climate. For example, right now this container is in the full sun. We're in spring, the weather is mild, our high is in the 70s or 80s. This is perfect. But once the summer sets in, for example, June, July, August, our summer is going to be extremely hot, and Texas summer sun is 10 times hotter than everywhere else. So at that time, I'm going to move this container into the spot that gets only morning sun and then afternoon shade. When I was planting this Roma tomato, I was using potting soil. I mixed in some llama manure and fertilizer, so this soil is very fertile. But in about a month, this tomato might need some fertilizer, and for that I might use some organic all-purpose granular fertilizer, or I might use liquid fish fertilizer, whatever I have on hand. How do I know when to water my plants in containers? I poke my finger into the soil, and if the top first inch of soil is dry, that's the perfect time to water them. If it's still moist, like right now, I do not water them. And when I water the containers, I water them sparingly, because if I water too much, then all the nutrients will run down with the water and the soil will be depleted. So when I water container plants, I water just enough for the water to make the soil moist and at the same time to stay in the container and not run out. It's never a good idea to leave the soil uncovered like that, so I'm going to use this Texas cedar mulch and put the mulch on top of the soil around the plant. I'm going to try to move it a little bit away from the stem of the plant. The mulch will help keep the soil moist, and also when you water your tomato plant, then the bacteria from the soil will not be splashing on the leaves. And when it's time to fertilize this plant, I'm simply going to move away the mulch, spread some fertilizer, and then put the mulch back. That's all for today. We're excited to grow Roma tomatoes this year, along with all the indeterminate tomatoes that we have. If you like this video, please consider liking it and subscribing to our channel. We appreciate all your support, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.